Hello and welcome to One on One. I am Cyril Stover. Security of lives and property continues to be a major concern, even as the authorities develop new strategies to ensure that Nigerians are safe and can carry out their daily activities without fear. Now, if it seems that just about every Nigerian is a security analyst or expert offering suggestions and stemming the tide of crime and criminality, it would be because citizens are deeply concerned about the situation. My guest has been here before on how best to build as safe an environment as possible. Today we push the frontiers of policing concepts and approaches to a crime-free society, or more realistically, a society where crime and criminality are at the barest minimum. Kemi Rotimi is a professor of history at the Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife. He is a historian of the police and policing, founder of Kamsalem Center of Policing in Nigeria, which is a research center on police studies. Professor Kemi Rotimi is a member of numerous professional bodies and is an author many times over. Prof, thanks for being here again.
It's a pleasure.
All right.
And I welcome myself to this bigger, better, more sophisticated studio.
All right. Okay. Well, you've always been known to state, categorically that policing and the concepts of policing was not bequeathed to this country by the colonial masters. And let's start on that premise and expand more on that.
Thank you very much. Yes, that is a fact. For those who have always lived within centralized state systems, that is, where you have the political hierarchy easily delineated and identifiable. You have the structure of the king by whatever local label is given, and then the officials of the palace. For the Yoruba states and kingdoms, you had these people who were slaves within the palace, with a multiplicity of names, Ilari, Emese, Aguren, depending on what part of Yoruba land. But in northern Nigeria, the Muslim areas, they are the collective name Dogari, pre-colonial rule, and Dogare, the plural. So you have always had, we have always had, those who have done the work of policing, what you know today as policing, which is serving the state in the capacity of arresting felons, summoning them to the presence of the king, and at times carrying out the commands of justice or the demands of justice when those who have offended or transgressed may have been punished. So it was not as if policing came to Nigeria only when colonial rule was imposed. No. As a matter of fact, when the British went out to govern, as I said before, and I reiterate, they went with two philosophies of policing. One was for likes to police likes, which was the one that undergirded the permission granted to those pre-colonial centralized states to adapt those who are serving as police in the palaces to become, from private officers of government, to become stipendiary officers of the state, serving as police by the local government level, if you like. The other philosophy was for strangers to police strangers. That was the philosophy that undergirded the formation of what we call today the Nigeria Police Force. And if you look at the origins of what is today the Nigeria Police Force, those who in Lagos, for instance, you used to have the Hausa Constabulary. The name didn't just come from nowhere. It was because they were already in Lagos area, the presence of some Hausa who were recruited to serve as police. But that was not a peculiar development, because for those who are ethnic identities, so these Hausa people have always, no. Those who served in the armed government police before it assumed the name MPF from 1930, in the north, were also strangers to the place. Not that you didn't have a leavening of locals, but you used strangers in those places for one simple reason. Colonial rule was about conquering a group of people against their will. So you needed a strong arm to badger them into compliance. And as I said before, most of those acts taken against the indigenes were called pacification raids. You are separating a man from his property and his land. He protested and you badger him, and you are calling it in pacification raids. So those two philosophies undergirded policing when the British went out to govern. The one that I'm more familiar with and I've studied in depth is this one, where those who had governed before colonial rule, emirs, obas, were allowed to keep those who served as police, but who are largely drawn from palace slaves.
Now, modern concepts of policing, you would say, have changed some of that. But there are people who feel today that the precursor to what we have now is still deeply rooted in what you just painted, and that is why policing, ensuring a safe environment would continue to be tasking and challenging.
Let there be no mistakes about some of these things. Considering the stage of our political development now, there is a bit of hyperactivity and oversensitivity to some of these things. The police anywhere in the world, or let me put it this way, policing is about what I call investing one man with state authority to affect the freedom of another. And why the philosophy that undergirded the formation of what is today the MPF, why it has now become the more dominant in our context, is because between 66, or from 66, when the First Republic collapsed and the first military government decided to do away with the native authority and the local government police forces of the northern and western regions, were then left with only the Nigeria police force. And today, because many of those who are now active Nigerians didn't even know about the native authority or local government police forces. And even when they did, they didn't know much about the fundamental services they render to their local communities because of their local knowledge. They remember them more for the fact that the politicians of the First Republic used them to tyrannize political opponents. Now, the Nigeria police force is still doing what it has always done. It is an arm of government. And there's something that is amusing, even with recent development. And let nobody think it can happen. There is no day that whoever is going to appear in a policing role will be from the private sector. I mean, in the sense that those who serve as police will always be agents of the state. You can have security guards, so you have some companies and all that. But when it is getting into the area of what you really can call policing, it has to be about governments deciding to form that body. And that's why the controversy that came up the other day came up.
Well, the important issue in all of this is ensuring that the country is safe, citizens can go about their businesses without fear, and that crime and criminality can be seen to be at the barest minimum. That has not been happening for a while now, and so many strategies have been put in place. And the big talk today is community policing. You also say that concept isn't new, it's always been there.
Now, community policing, in the sense in which many people know about it now, is a phenomenon from 2000 or thereabouts, when under the IG-ship of Mr. Tafa Balogun. That concept was introduced into policing philosophy. It is not as if there's a big deal about it, but my contention, which I stay with very vigorously, is that before Abraham, Jesus was. Any police that had been abolished with the collapse of the First Republic, that was community policing par excellence. And as I tried to explain then, the best practice of it was in the Emirates of Northern Nigeria, where from the mid-20s, children of the nobility were encouraged to join the local police forces in their domains. Community policing, as is understood now, is all about let the people who from within a given area be dominant in the policing outfit in the area. It's not a big deal. It is not as if the Nigerian police force had not tried at some point to make membership of the contingent within given areas be more of the local indigenous of the area. But the experiment didn't work. In fact, the other day, I was playing back the tape of one of my interactive forums, which I conducted in 5 cities in 2018. And the one I held in Abuja had 4 retired inspectors general of police present. Mr. Novo, Mr. Kiro, Dr. Arase, 3 of them. I remember Mr. Novo when he was commenting on this phenomenon, that when the police tried it about 1989 or so, deploying members to their local areas, the thing failed because it became difficult for the members serving within the local areas to even enforce the law, because you grab a felon and the relations pounce on your own relations. Oh, it's your son that has come now to put my son in difficulty, and you people think you can get away with it. He cited, I remember him clearly now because I played the tape back a few days ago. He cited 2 cases, and one was particularly nasty in Bauchi when this thing happened. So community policing is just a philosophy that is supposed to make members of a community relate better with the police to deliver good policing services, which will be life a little more livable and more tolerable.
Which means it clearly states that policing is not the exclusive preserve of state.
No. Policing will always be the preserve of state. Let's not confuse it. What you're trying to do with community policing, the way it is being touted now, is to let those who serve as police relate better with the communities in which they serve. But the new interpretation being put on it is Nigerians now want more of the indigenes of a given area to predominate in the local contingent of the police. But now we are even getting into very rough waters as to who's police now. Because with this new crisis, with the crisis that came up the other day over the Amotekun thing, now you are wondering who is police and who is Amotekun. What about that?
Let's, before we get to that controversy, what are the responsibilities of the community, the public, in terms of ensuring safety and security and law and order?
Look, in every society, you have problems with some members of the community. Every society has its criminal elements. That is truth. But when you talk of policing is everybody's responsibility, yes, everybody's responsibility to the extent that if you have information, you want to give it to those who are constitutionally required to work on the information. But everybody knows what the experience has been. A lady was killed in Abuja, a very senior civil servant, who closed from work at 11 p.m. or so. Just last week, the information that is available is that she had complained about some rough guys around where she lived. The information she gave, that information got to the criminally minded elements through the those who she may have given the information. So cooperation with the community is not a problem.
Well, but that might also still be speculative.
No, I mean, as I've said, that's what's in the public domain. I have not done any investigation. But what I'm saying now is that members of the public have always been willing to cooperate with the police. And in fairness to the police, a good number of them have also treated information that they have got with decency. But you still have those who will misbehave even among the police. And there is no law that can completely eradicate some of these things, i.e., poor cooperation from members of the public, at times deriving from past bad experience, then misbehavior by the police, who will misuse the information they have been given. In other words, rather than use the information to tackle crime, you still use it by giving information back to the criminal. But that is not an institutional challenge. It is about individuals within the institution. And there's something I've always said. You can legislate for many things, but you cannot legislate for integrity, and you cannot legislate for conscience. So members of the public, a good number, will continue to try to cooperate with the police. A good number of members of the police force, any type at all, will continue to want to discharge their responsibilities within limits of decency. But the rogue elements within the organizations, there's nothing you can do about that. And nobody puts it on his forehead, I am officially a policeman, but actually a criminal. No. Nor do members of the public also go about showing that whatever you do. So the cooperation that is desired, right now there is an overemphasis on it must be, it's as if everybody who must be police in Buhari must be indigenous of Buhari. It will never happen. You can't have it just Buhari members, Kwa Buhari. Yes, you want to have more of inequity. Maybe you want to have more of Yoruba elements in the Nigeria police force. Because that's the only police organization that we have as of today. In Ondo, you want to have more of Ondo indigenous. But when the NA police, my people, existed, was it Eldorado? Was it all fun? Why were members of that organization? Why was that type of police abolished by the military? In retrospect, it was a question of throwing away the baby with the bathwater. And what people are angling after now is a return to what we rejected in '66. As the Yoruba say, Ogbon were me. Now, but we want to go back to it now. But how best you do proceed? So it's this tendency to want to reject the MPF, outright rejection of the MPF, like some really politically, don't to use any word that is foul, but those who are really angling after, let's do away with the police. We've done it before. We did away with the local government police. Now, 40-something years later, we are angling after returning to that type of police. So in whatever we do, let emotionalism be reduced and let us use our heads.
There's also the aspect of what you might call decentralization of the police. Yes. And some have carried that forward. And, you know, some have come out boldly and said, look, the thing is, as long as a society continues to live in denial of the benefits of police not centrally controlled, so long we'll be having such issues. What do you say?
No. This centralization or over-centralization of the MPF is a byproduct of when the local government and the native authority police forces were abolished. In other words, the title of my book is deliberate, you know. The police in a federal state, the Nigerian experience. In other words, before now, we had a multiplicity of policing at the governmental level. Because the native authority police, whose nomenclature was changed in the western region when there were a lot of people came to local government police, operated at the local government level. In the west, they were provincialized, arranged on provincial basis. And it provincial transfers took place. In the north, for all of the times, they operated within their native authority areas. But many Nigerians do not know that but for the 1966 coup, Ahmed Bello, as Premier of the Northern Region, was inching towards provincializing the Native Authority Police. So the the regulation of ownership of the police so that states, to use the right word, states can now own police, is not a criminal advocacy. That should have no quarrel. But if we have gone about constitution amendment from 1999 to date, maybe we will have crossed this bridge. In other words, if National Assembly members have not been in the habit of coming in and then wholesale review of the Constitution, and that's one of the juiciest, choicest committees, Committee on Review of the Constitution. They have considered it again now. The Senate President, Deputy Senate President is usually the chairman. But incidentally, the immediate past Deputy Senate President, Ike Ekweremadu, has been very strident in this matter of deregulation of ownership, and is the frontline advocate for state police that we have today in the National Assembly. If his colleagues had rallied around him over time, maybe. In other words, this issue will have been in the front burner, and then we will have canvassed views. But when you do this wholesale review of the Constitution, 1,001 things thrown in the mix, it's difficult. And the closest the Nigerian elite went to elite consensus was the 2014 Jonathan confab, whose report was not touched because it became politically risky. In the end, that risk didn't still avail for Jonathan. He still didn't win the election. But that issue came up and it was vigorously canvassed. Because deregulating the ownership of police and policing in Nigeria today has become very politically charged and emotive.
So wherein do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line?
The line is already clearly drawn. Southern Nigerian political elite want state police. Most northern Nigerian political elite are not persuaded that we should go there.
Is there an impasse there?
There's not quite an impasse. At the end of the day, it's going to be jaw. Senator Ekweremadu must have laid the revised bill again yesterday in the National Assembly. If we take this seriously and be a little more intellectual or sober, maybe.
Prof, can you situate this for us? This is my community.
Yes.
And for very obvious reasons, we decide that it's time we set up some security outfit, albeit not one with the powers of the state security outfit. Have we breached any regulations on that?
Well, I'll help you with your question, and by reframing it, because we are going to where you want to push us, but let's get there so that we save time. It's about Amotekun. And then, look, when the other day that thing came up, for those of us who know what we are doing and who know what we are talking about, the challenge was there any bill, any law, any proposed law to undergird the operation of what they were about to do? The answer, initially, there was so much noise. Eventually, what we said is what they have eventually gone to do. The other point I made, you cannot have a policing outfit that is extraterritorial under our current constitution and arrangement. Western Nigerian security, no. What you can have is what they now want to have or about to have. You can have a Amotekun Ekiti, Amotekun Ondo, Amotekun Oyo, Amotekun Janguza, whatever. But you can't have Western Nigeria Amotekun. No. So it is not, unless we are inching towards chaos, which is avoidable, you cannot, because you are so pissed off the Nigeria police force, go for anything. You can't go for anything, for goodness sake. The Nigeria police force, that organization didn't make itself what it is today. When the NA police in the northern and western regions were abolished, we were left with only one police organization. And many Nigerians keep forgetting that for in the immediate aftermath of abolition, you had these long years of military rule. And while that lasted, there was under-recruitment into the Nigeria police force. Of course, there was underfunding. So now that this consciousness of the effect of the paucity of numbers of the personnel of the MPF has caught up with us, now we are reacting or overreacting. This thing is about not having enough personnel, or even for the MPF. If we go by the figures that we keep banding about, we're over 180 million. The strength of the Nigeria police force is still under 500,000. It doesn't work that way. The crisis that Boko Haram, banditry, and all that has thrown up simply adumbrates the fact that we have too many ungoverned spaces in Nigeria, because adequate recruitment was not made into the Nigeria police force. And look at every time an attempt is made to even increase the number. The latest was this crisis between the Police Service Commission and the force headquarters. But you can see those who are contending acting very gentlemanly went to court. Because you had past attorneys general that had commented on the scene, some way more on the side of the PSU, some way more on the side of the police high command. Each one chose what it liked. Okay, let's go to court again. Of course, the latest now is that the court has ruled it is the police high command. Fine. What we are looking for is increase in the number of those who serve as personnel of the Nigeria police force. And then after that, you think about their training. And then give us a police service.
Under the concepts of community policing, what role can, vigilante groups, such security outfits that are set up by, not regions now, but perhaps communities, small areas. I do know that in some cities you have vigilante groups in, areas, for instance, who work towards reducing the rate of crime. What role can them, and can these ones be incorporated into this new philosophy that we're pushing?
Now, these are the people we call non-state actors. In fairness to the leadership of the Nigeria police force, other than early in this dispensation, about 2000, when the OPC and the police had this rough in Lagos, most of the time, the leadership of the Nigeria police force has left well alone, i.e., you have these vigilantes, they're all over Nigeria. But once they do not exceed their bounds and they cooperate with the local MPF detachment, they've worked very well together. There's no debate about the fact that vigilantes that are set up from within communities help a lot with collecting information about criminal elements. In any case, the criminals are also members of this vigilante anyway. I'm not saying vigilante groups are made of criminal elements, but they help to get information which they pass on to the police, and the police have used well. And the example I keep citing, and I will never tire of citing it, Lagos, as I said before, it was actually under President Obasanjo that this hint about state police was first flown as a kite under Sarumi, with Sarumi as Minister of Information. This was quite early, about 2000. Now, but the thing didn't fly, it was left there. Bola Tinubu of Lagos eventually decided to put uniform on the backs of very many people, Lasma, Kai, Y, many of them doing what you can call police duties. No conflict, no clash. They now came with this neighborhood watch. I participated in a seminar in Lagos in 2000, discussing what should the neighborhood watch be like and what should be happening. In fact, the first time I used the expression, which I later used for my 5-city interactive forums, approaches to the policing of a perplexed society, was the way I reflected on the crisis going on then about security of life and property, especially in Lagos. And when they had this seminar, I went and wrote that short paper on it. Now, but Lagos has moved on since then to now get to this level of this Lagos Neighborhood Security Corps, with Mr. Israel Ajao, retired DIG, as the head, chairperson, kind of not quite the operational head. So LASMA has been there. Everybody knows what LASMA does. What I'm saying, therefore, is that where the hype has not been unnecessary, the police high command has always cooperated with states or communities that have formed those vigilantes. When Baba Fashion and his daughter had been killed, and there was so much noise, wasn't it the OPC guys who really moved, and there was some quietening of the emotions? But at times, people don't even want to give credit to those who deserve to have the credit. I'm saying that non-former state actors, vigilantes, OPC and co, have had their place in the ensuring of security of lives and property. But when you now push it to this level, that you now come, the Southwest governors now came up the other day with this Amotekun thing. That's not how this noise came.
Prof, how do you respond to suggestions that all this would not be talking about all this anyway if the state actor, the constitutional actor, had been performing its functions duly? We would not be here talking about all these bodies,
yes,
ancillary bodies, if you like.
Now, this state actor, you are refusing to use the name. The members of the Nigeria Police Force, that is this state actor you are referring to. Because the Nigerian Constitution says there shall be only one police organization named as Nigeria Police Force. I have told you, giving you the background to the challenge they have now. It's an organization that I have a lot of sympathetic understanding for. Not because of my academic orientation in the matter of studying the history of police and policing in Nigeria, but also because of the objective reality of their circumstances. You are dealing with a situation in which you don't have the personnel, and then, of course, you have the equipment. Let me put it crudely. As the military took over policing duties after the Civil War, they also appropriated policing budget. The little that was getting to the organization was just being cornered by the elite, the senior ones in the organization. This is not being duly critical of them. I am on terra firma when I tell those who are listening that I have a report. I didn't saw it. It's a 1976 report. Late MD Yusufu, as the Inspector General of Police, constituted a committee. The title of the assignment, Committee to look into the welfare challenges of the inspectorate and other ranks and how to ameliorate them. I have the report, 101-page report. I found it in the private library of late AIG Brisibe, FHE Brisibe. He was the third Commissioner of Police in Ibadan. Now, he rose to be AIG before he retired. It was in his library in Warri, in the course of research, that I found the document. When you read that document, and you get to appreciate the rot that was already in the Nigeria Police Force in the mid-70s, those who are in the organization now will be referring to that period as if it was a golden era. For where? When I say it, I mean it, that the military, in the years of their rule, really demolished that organization, the Nigeria Police Force. And it has not recovered from it. Not allowing them to recruit, not funding them well. So those who come in now, some people will say I should join the police force. But when you then come in, they're not the wherewithal. Nigerians will be shocked to know that as far back as that period that I'm referring to, in that report that is with me, babies were being made by police officers and at the back of disused vehicles in the elite police barrack in Nigeria, Obalende, which I suspect you know very well because you're a Lagosian. You are talking of policemen making babies with their wives, or not concubines, because they're posted to Lagos, no accommodation. Because what happened to the police was that as number increased somewhat and equipment became little, accommodation that was meant for the other ranks were taken over by the superior officers. So you are pushing gradually the ASP pushed inspector, inspector pushed sergeant, the sergeant pushed Korofo, and then Korofo had to sleep under the bridge. And then these are the people you are still asking to go to the street to work. The policing, and I'm shouting, the policing that touches lives is done by recruit constable up to inspector. It's not, by the time you're an ASP, you're already a desk officer. And it is this group of human beings, from recruit constable to inspector, that are underpaid and short paid. I mean, their payments are late and they are not in full. It is not Kemi Rotimi saying this. Ring him as Inspector General. Almost wrote his name in gold when he identified these twin problems, which I have known because of my research orientation, of delayed payment and short payment. October 2020, about December 2010, because he took office in October when Onobo left. 2010. After that expose, pay officers in the Lagos, Ondo, and Imo commands were arrested. They were brought to this Abuja and were docked, but we heard of the trial only once. You want my guess as to what must have happened? People must have gone to ring him to say, oh boy, this is we all spoil business. Now, when you pay the men who are on the street, daytime, nighttime, when you underpay them and then you delay their payment, how do they survive? So there is an aspect of this crisis, this policing crisis, that is for the leadership of the police to take very seriously. And I repeat, until the welfare gap between the officer class and the NCOs in the Nigerian police was significantly bridged, we won't get the police service that we desire.
Well, there hasn't been any shortage of attempts to address some of these issues that we've raised here. A recent one, of course, is the establishment of a National Institute for Police Studies. As we await to see how this will be integrated into the general strategy for better policing and enhanced security operations, let us look at past efforts. You think there hasn't been the strong political will, if you like, to implement some of the suggestions that have been made over time?
Look, the case of the Nigerian police and the personnel, when I talk about it, I can be a bit emotional because of the details that I have. I've just given you now an insight into what their situation was in the mid-70s. Most people listening to me now or watching will be alarmed to know that as far back as the mid-70s, the situation was already that bad. And whoever wants to read the report, I'll make it available. It's not a private document. Now, but don't be surprised that some people may later be looking for me as if it is a security document. But I'll ask them to follow me to worry. Now, efforts have been made. The question you are putting to me, various committees on police welfare and whatever has been set up. In 2013, when 50 trainees were struggling over the rotting head of rotting fish, at the police training school in Ikeja, that was when President Jonathan was traveling, and then Channels did the expose, and he stopped by to look at the situation. That was what I used in writing a paper when I was in Oxford about what I call the malformation of the Nigerian policeman and why he cannot be an agent of change. I've just told you about 1975. I have reports between 1975 and the ones that are undertaken under the Abuja presidency, still showing this rot, enduring. We are talking of enduring rot.
Is this, I don't like to use the word, but for want of a better expression,
yes,
is this a Nigerian thing?
No. Oh, sorry. Yes. The answer is yes. I'll tell you why it is yes. President Obasanjo created the NSCDC. That organization, it was a question of just putting down the Nigeria Police Act and changing the nomenclature. In other words, where you have MPF, you put NSCDC. Meet two NSCDC and two regular policemen at the lower level any day. will you not prefer to go with the NSCDC, even in terms of accoutrement, the dressing? Now, why did the man create the NSCDC when what we needed actually was an increase in the number of the personnel of the Nigerian police force? But he created it to deflate the MPF. And don't forget, it was shortly after he took office that the police strike that saw Musiliu Smith and his team out of service took place in 2002. Was it the fault of Musiliu Smith that the police didn't have the wherewithal? No. Policing is a political decision. That organization is always an arm of the executive, truth be told. So those who are in the police are not the ones who create their budget. They are not the ones, they can only they present what they would need, and then you give them what you want to give them. But by the time you splinter their work, and you now create an NSCDC, remarkable for the other day, the protecting pipeline, and then some of them are colluding, and then they push themselves inside the dungeon in Lagos. Now, in other words, you have this major organization. You are neglecting it. You are creating a newer one. Look at the leadership turnover. Ade Abolori was appointed, when Obasanjo had created the NSCDC, or President Obasanjo created the NSCDC, Mr. Aturamu was the foundation head. Aturamu was a retired CP. After Aturamu, just a second, Abolori came into office. Abolori came into office when Mr. Balogun Tafa was IG. Abolori outlasted 5 inspectors general of police. So if Abolori had any program of reform for the NSCDC, he had ample time. On the average, since 1999, we have had IGs lasting for only about 1.5 years. What program of reform can they implement?
Speaking of the civil defense corps, say, well, some people remember a civil defense organization, that kind of organization, during the years of the Civil War. Was this not, an offshoot of that? What
President Obasanjo created is not anywhere near whatever ad hoc arrangement was made during the Civil War. Most Nigerians may not know this. The MPF was an organization that was largely dominated in terms of personnel by Eastern Nigerians, not necessarily the Igbo, but the Igbos are the dominant group in Eastern Nigeria. Why? The British did not allow Eastern Nigeria to have any police. They didn't because at the inception of colonial rule, there was this challenge with identifying authority structure among the Igbo. They still make the joke about it, Ezego. I mean, it was colonial rule that brought the Igbos this thing, truth be told. So, whatever civil defense arrangement was there. So when the Civil War came, many of them went home. There was a depletion in the number of personnel left for the Nigeria Police Force. That gap was filled partially when the local government police had been abolished. A good number of those who are interested in policing from those organizations in the northern region and the west joined the MPF. But there was no significant improvement in the number of personnel of the Nigeria Police Force. It is the long years of neglect, even in the matter of recruitment of personnel, that we are dealing with. In 1982, the Shagari government brought in British police advisors. I have their report. This training school in Goza for Mopol that Boko Haram eventually took over, and thank God for Mr. Balogun creating one in Ila that has now come to the rescue to train Mopol. Now, the critique in that report of that training institution, it was created but there was no shooting range. The crisis of relating with the Nigeria Police Force by those who have governed us at the executive level, whether under the military or under the civilian, is mind-boggling. But late Mr. Sunday Adeusi did try under Shagari to improve the lot of the Nigeria Police Force in terms even of personnel and welfare, but it got a little too political. And when the military came, incidentally, President Muhammad Buhari now was Minister of State, then things happened.
Right. Today, of deep concern to most Nigerians is the security situation and the huge task before the police force to ensure law and order. We have seen the military now performing the functions of internal security, what ordinarily should be the preserve of the police force. And so Nigerians crave a more responsive and functioning police force. Which way forward?
More responsive and functioning police force. You start with personnel. This personnel, if you do not increase the number, you are going to have a problem. You and I know, other Nigerians watching us know it, that even the poor number that we have, a large chunk of that number is still being misused as bag carriers for senators and senators. I was at an event, I won't mention the state because I don't want to cause offense. The old man that that dragged me along to that event, as we entered the arena, said, Kemi, can you see why Nigeria will never be policed well? What are these large number of policemen? What are they doing here now? Nothing will happen to their big bosses inside this place yet. And you know how many hours we may be here today? And they will do no work but just waiting for their guys to come out. So we are the leadership elite in Nigeria is running away from one fact, that you can do away with the Nigeria police force. They are joking. That organization, you can abolish it. So you had better get your acts together, improve on their number, then provide them facilities. You can go create your NSCDC, NSC, Amoteku and Agbamrere and all that. You won't take the place of the Nigeria Police Force. No. That is the organization we know, and then they can do better. And like they themselves like to advertise. When we go abroad on international assignment, we perform very well. Yes, because you have all that you need to do your work. Here, and then when you wake up your fellow human being to go chase some robbers, or you be with nothing, the man has, yes sir, the moment he gets out, he sits in one corner. Okay, that is tough. Did you follow him there? Maybe you woke him up to go and be looking for that. So we must increase the number. The long years of military rule, and nobody who was in the military will argue with me, the long years of military rule dealt with policing, that particular institution. You just talked about appropriating police duty. That didn't start yesterday. I'm telling you now that after the Civil War, as the military came into policing duties, armed robbery, whatever, fire, whatever, they also appropriated police budgets.
Training and capacity building.
Training and capacity building. When you know the state of police training schools, you weep. I remember that as Mr. Musiliu Smith was taking office, some of his colleagues went to Enugu. At least clearly I remember seeing the retired Supreme Court Justice, that woman, went with that team. There's this fantastic training school in Enugu. I'm not talking the G River one, which used to be for detective, was at detective school. But there's another one in Enugu. That thing has been run down. As they say, Tete. That report that I found in AIG Bisibe's house, there is a segment devoted to that school. And you know what is funny? Mr. Pari of Sayade was a member of that committee set up by MD Yusufu to look into that crisis of welfare challenges of the inspectorate and blah, blah. Pari of Sayade was acting AC then. He ended his career as a DIG. Later, he became chairman of the Police Service Commission. Actually, he was the first retired police officer to also head the Police Service Commission. And if you have looked at the trend since his time up to now, the thing has not worked. That is, being a former superior officer when whoever is a competent IG was a lower level officer doesn't necessarily mean that when you are now chairman and he's IG, when he sees you, will shiver. He won't shiver. He is the man of the moment. And you have seen it. Just plot the graph. Potum Idris and Sokiro, you remember, The incumbent IG and the Police Service Commission Chairman, Mr. Smith, if you know Mr. Smith is a gentleman, I've not met Mr. Adamu, but from all indications, he's a gentleman. But they had that crisis the other day of who should recruit. Do you think that after going to court and coming back, like the Yoruba say, we can't be friends now? They are going to try to tolerate each other, but it would have been very well if that crisis didn't come up. So what I'm saying, provide facilities, build more schools, equip them better. That organization, let nobody holding executive position think that you can do away with the Nigeria Police Force. No.
For many of the states and local governments who are thinking of helping out, since it would seem that the task ahead is daunting. It's pretty daunting. For those who are thinking to set up bodies that should complement the constitutional authority of the police, what are the lessons that can be drawn from the recent controversy over Amotekun? Okay. And because we've had some people say, look, why would everybody else establish? Some have even drawn examples and said, look, you have even religious bodies have some form of policing units. Why is that different from Amotekun?
Now, you've been trying to get there without getting there, and I've been trying to lead you there. Finally, we're there together. Lagos still presents the best example of what can happen in this matter of policing. I've traced it from when the Neighborhood Watch was created under Bola Tinubu. Fashola's government started a trust fund that has now been replicated in other states to assist the police. Now Lagos has gone on to now put together the other organizations they had under the Lagos Neighborhood Security Corps. When this Amotekun thing came the other day, many people didn't notice that there was not much noise coming from the Lagos end. And when Bola Tinubu soberly addressed it, after people had abused him that he didn't talk and he talked, they still abused him. So it was a question of you don't, you are damned. Do, you are damned. But if they follow what Lagos is doing now, a bill has been presented. Other states have also done it, but we told them that they should have done that before. They said no, but they are back to what we said they should have done, and that where some of us have vindicated. Fine. Let them follow the example of Lagos. Whatever Lagos is doing, whichever approach Lagos has adopted, let them adopt it. Let this muscle flexing about, as if the way people talk and what they write, Amotekun as if it has replaced the police. One man who is an officer of this Yoruba organization, who has been suspended or expelled from the organization, suddenly found his voice. If community policing that the police are talking about, we subordinate Amotekun, we won't accept that in Yoruba land. Who is he? Where is Yoruba land? Where does it start from? That he is the spokesperson. He has been suspended from the organization. What Dr. Olajide? It's not as if I cannot name him. I read the interview that he granted. Amotekun, or whatever, the police will do the best that they can to cooperate with them. And the thing is already coalescing now. You can see that the noise has reduced the moment they decided to finally go and come up with a bill. Initially, what we were reading in the papers, as if the 6 governors will sit at a table like this, you sign and I sign. I think they were told, you are in brain now. Now they know you can have Amotekun Ekiti. Amotekun, I heard the Attorney General of Ekiti yesterday talking about the bill that they are working on, but it is now state basis. It cannot be trans-territorial. No sentiment about that. You cannot have Southwestern Nigeria security, whatever. No. Amotekun. But we are now getting to the second phase, and let me shout it here again. The police haven't been very nice in cooperating with them. We are going to let us integrate this into our community policing program. Let nobody overreach himself or herself about Amotekun must be separate from community policing. You are looking for trouble. The police will never yield their place to any other organization. They have not yielded it to the NSCDC. Is it Amotekun they will yield it to, or Forest Guard in Enugu, or wherever? So no.
The bottom line, as we round off,
yes,
Professor Kemi Rotimi, is to improve in the general concepts of policing.
Yes.
An aspect of this discussion we haven't gone into, and for very obvious reasons, and because there's no end to that argument.
Which one?
State police, no state police. Politicians will use the state police. Oh, politicians already use the federal police. That is perhaps a subject for another day when we come together. But your last word on this?
My last word on this, which will be my last word on what you have just raised.
Right.
Let nobody, if you are not interested in state police, don't invoke this thing about politicians will use them. I have always used 3 Nigerians under Yoruba, Omoborowo, Odunjo, and Afolabi. In the First Republic, they were AG persons, and they suffered when the Akitola crisis came. In the Second Republic, the 3 of them started off as UPN. When they wanted to be governor, they went into the MPN. Now, in the First Republic, the police were thugs in uniform. In the Second Republic, when they wanted to be governor, the police were protectors of lives and property and enforcers of the law. One man's policeman can be another man's thug, depending on what side of the divide you stand. You don't want state police, no problem. You want state police, no problem. But let us jaw, and let nobody flex muscles, and let nobody do anything that will make the Nigeria put the back of officers and men of the Nigeria police force up. You won't survive. Don't risk it. Don't try them.
Professor Kemi Rotimi, as usual, it's been interesting talking to you.
My pleasure.
Thank you for coming on the second time to expand this discussion on policing and national security. Thank you once again, and wish you well.
Thank you very much.
That's our program today. Thank you for watching. Next week we'll reach you again on One on One. I am Cyril Stober. Bye.